Joining us now, White House reporter for Bloomberg News, Tolu Olorunipa, and CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Shan Wu. Tolu, the president admits he hasn't read these documents. Do you have any reporting on where exactly his head is, if he really believes these filings help him, or if it's just this image he's trying to project?
Yeah, he's been trying to project this image for much of the last 2 years. You've heard this constant refrain from the president: no collusion, no collusion. No matter what happens, he talks about how everything comes out showing no collusion. But now we're seeing from these documents that there are several documented instances where people within Trump's orbit, within his campaign, his former lawyer, were in contact with Russians during the campaign, talking about doing deals. And it's getting closer and closer to the president. His family's now being swept up in this, and it's not looking quite as optimistic and positive as the way the president described it. It's very clear that this is a president who's under duress. He just announced he's going to be changing his chief of staff for the third time since he took office. This is a presidency and a White House that's very much under duress, and these documents by the Mueller investigation shows how much that this administration is struggling to keep up with what is a very clear and very strong sense of investigation from the Mueller team. They're not making a lot of mistakes, but the president seems to be calling audibles day after day after day.
Shan, if you are the president's attorney, are you happy with what you're reading in these documents?
I'm very unhappy if I'm the president's attorney. Really, although the DOJ through the Southern District has not charged the president, and holding aside the constitutional question about charging a sitting president, they have clearly accused him. Cohen's admissions state that there is campaign finance fraud, which was directly at the direction of the president. That's potentially an impeachable offense. Again, politics aside, that is a big problem for him. And the biggest problem has always been with Michael Cohen, that he was the confidant, he was the attorney, and with your attorney, you let your hair down, you talk about things, you may muse about things, you need some advice. All that's now very much open, even though there wasn't a formal cooperation agreement, which we can talk about. Clearly, Cohen has an axe to grind, and he was clearly giving up information which is detrimental for the president.
The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has been trying to distance the president from all of this. He says this, quote, Mueller's late Friday dump demonstrates yet again no evidence connected to the president. It also indicates SDNY, the Southern District of New York, is asking that Cohen receive a 4-year prison sentence, longest so far, because, as we have said, he's still lying. So obviously, Shan, that first part clearly not true, but I want to kind of focus on that second part because Giuliani makes an interesting point. Because prosecutors are calling for Cohen to get a substantial prison sentence despite his help, if he's still going to prison, what reason would Cohen have to flip at all? Why not keep up the lies, theoretically, and hope for a pardon?
Well, I think that trying to get inside of his head, he was not holding out much hope for a pardon. The president is all over the place in terms of what his rationale is and when he does give pardons. Cohen tried a very unorthodox approach to this. He basically, if you want to be Zen about it, was the art of cooperating without cooperating. He didn't have a formal agreement. And in that sense, he had a bit more control over what his disclosures were. The downside, he didn't have a promise of anything, and we're also seeing that the Southern District has, in effect, punished him for not entering into the traditional cooperator agreement where they would have more control. Also, you see that the Mueller folks kind of took it easy on him, didn't take a position on sentencing, kind of deferred to SDNY, and SDNY is properly looking at a long course of behavior. It's not just what's happened recently. There's the tax evasion, the financial fraud to the institutions. So they're looking at a pretty long history, not just the things of value in the moment right now, which is all focused on the Trump campaign and the Russian connections.
And I think it is also important for our viewers to understand that the SDNY was all about the investigation directly into Cohen. We had the raid of his properties and all of the documents and technology that was then taken. That's separate from the Mueller probe. The Mueller probe and their filing says that Cohen was cooperative. They believe he has been truthful. But again, two separate investigations to some degree. Cohen's just connected to both of them. Tolu, there was some talk, if I recall earlier this year, though, of Cohen maybe getting a pardon, right?
Yeah, this was something that was sort of floated out there, and there was all the talk from Cohen about how he would take a bullet for the president and how he'd stand by the president until the end. Clearly, at some point, under the weight of all of these investigations and potential charges, he decided that he could not trust the president or rely on the president to pardon him or get him out of all of the legal problems that he was in. On the SDNY side, you have not only the issues of lying to different banks and some of the tax fraud concerning the taxi medallions, but also these payments to two of the alleged mistresses of then candidate Trump and campaign violations around that directly implicate the president. And then on the Mueller side, you have all of the questions about the discussions that were taking place between Cohen and various Russians close to the Kremlin, thinking about doing a financial deal, a real estate deal in Moscow during the campaign, and how he lied about that to Congress. So there is a long list of legal challenges that Cohen has because of some of the lies that he told and some of the deceptive practices that he engaged in. But on both sides, on the SDNY side and on the Mueller probe, he is implicating President Trump in some of those crimes as well.
All right, Talu Olorunipa, thank you. Shan Wu, much more to come.